your eyes and imagine 1967. The songs on the radio might be the Beatles, or maybe Sly and the Family Stones, or James Brown. That's the year that my family moved from the South to the North. From the South, Washington, D.C., for those of you who know, that is the South, to the North, New Jersey. And we moved to a town called Teaneck, New Jersey. Now, we moved there when my family decided to move when my father transferred jobs at IBM from Washington to New York City. And when we came, they chose Teaneck. What you might not know is Teaneck is a town that really, at that time, was not like any town in the United States. Teaneck was the first town in the country to voluntarily, not wait for forced integration, but to voluntarily integrated schools by vote of the township and the powers that be. And so they moved to this seemingly liberal town, and we visited Teaneck many times before we got there because our house was one of the houses at the end of a dead-end street, dead-end then, cul-de-sac now, dead-end street that was being built. And we got to see the house go up and see our rooms and our backyard, and we were all very excited for this move. And as we drove up from Washington, I was thinking about all the newness, the new room, the new neighbors, the new street. And the newness was a bit daunting, but I was coming out with my mother, my father, my three sisters, and we really were a very tight-knit family. And we knew that for the four sisters, we had each other. So even if we couldn't find anyone to play with and be with, we had a really rock-solid home life and family unit. So, and we had a mother who was a teacher who said, you know, if you have imagination, you can always come up with something to do. You can always have fun. You don't even need any things. You can always do that. So we had really a great start. So we moved from the South. We get to Teaneck. We moved in the summer so that we could be there before school started. And out of the four sisters, the two middle ones, myself and my sister Dawn, are the most extroverted. And so we're the kind of kids that, you know, always could go up to somebody and, you know, say, hey, what are you doing? Can we try? You know, we were the ones to always be able to kind of make friends. And we were that way then, we're that way now. And so that's you know, when we moved up in the summer, we went outside and we were like, all right, let's check out the neighborhood, bring our dolls, find somebody to play with. And we went up to one of the little girls in the neighborhood and we said, hey, you want to play with us? We have our dolls, we have our doll clothes, we could do this. And she eagerly accepted that invitation. And so we sat down on the sidewalk in front of her house. And her house was one of the older houses. Every other house other than the two new houses had been there for decades. And her house was one of the bigger houses in the neighborhood. And bigger in the sense that instead of having one step up to get into the house, it had several stairs. It probably had 10 stairs before you got to the front door. And so we're sitting down on the sidewalk, we're playing. We waved to my mother, who's out in the front yard gardening. Her passion was gardening. And we're just busy in this imaginative doll play. And we hear the door fly open from the little girl's house. And we all looked up. And we see her mother come flying out of the house, taking the steps, 2 at a time at least, screaming at the top of her lungs. I told you not to touch them. I told you not to play with them. I told you not to talk to them. Go inside and wash your hands right now. We all froze. We didn't know what to do. I froze, my sister froze, the little girl froze. We just didn't know. And I didn't really know how to feel either, but I know I felt badly. I was like, what is going on? And so the little girl gets up, head down, and starts slowly towards her house. And meanwhile, my mom, luckily for us, was still in the front yard and had witnessed all of the commotion and came running over. And some may say, you know, she's going to come over there and tell that lady off and give her a piece of her mind and curse her out. But that wasn't my mother. My mother was one who believed in choosing the right words and being impactful with your words. And she always said, you don't have to curse, you don't have to go off, you just have to choose your words carefully. And she chose 2 sets of words. The first were for the mom and the daughter. And she said to them, how dare you do that to my children? How dare you do that to your child? Go inside and take care of your child. What you just did is going to have long-lasting effects on who she is. Go inside and take care of your child. The next set of words were from my sister and I. And she said to us, you know, you're going to see this again in your life. You're going to experience people who say mean things and do mean things totally based on how you look and the color of your skin. And you have a choice in how you live. You have a choice in how you take that in and what you do with it and how it affects who you are. And one choice is that you can be loving. You can be loving to yourself, and you can be loving to all mankind. You can be loving to everyone. And what she taught us in those words was being loving doesn't mean you don't stand up and speak out and say when something is wrong, something is wrong. Being loving to yourself is that you can do that. You do that. And you do it in a loving way. And you do it loving humanity, wanting everybody to move to a better place and to be better. And being loving is really the vehicle. And so I've had to go back to that lesson and that message many, many times over my lifetime, and I imagine I'll continue to have to go back to that event and that lesson until I die, because we live in the society we live in, and race is still, it has wholly gotten better than it was in 1967, but race is still an issue. Racism is still an issue in our society. So I'll have to keep going back to that lesson and that message. I had to go back to it with my oldest daughter when we moved to Westchester from Philadelphia, when all the little kids in the school refused to let her into any of the clubs. And she decided, being a proud black woman in the making, she didn't know it, but she's like, I'm going to start my own club, and it'll be a club of one. And when the other kids found out and told their parents, they called the school and said, she moved from Philadelphia to Westchester. She's starting a gang in the elementary school. Go figure. So I had to reach back to that, okay, be loving, and go talk to the principal and the teacher and really kind of get them to see, the lesson in there. I had to be loving when my youngest came home crying because she was brown like the color of dirt, and she was therefore ugly and bad, because that's what the kids told her at school. I had to be loving when I was trying to park in the space and somebody decided to roll his window down and call me the N-word. And I said, let me wait till he parks and go and tap on his window, and try to be strong and loving to myself and him, and say, what made you feel that you could try to ruin my day? How bad a day were you having that you were going to use that word and make me feel bad? And he, of course, froze and didn't know what to say, and I was loving to myself. And I was loving even at work, where I was arguing with somebody at work to try to get a change in some regulation, and they, instead of, at some point in the argument, they said, just like I'm a white man and that won't change, and this won't change. And I realized that wasn't about the argument at all. That was about bringing race in the room. It was about bringing privilege and power in the room and to make me feel bad. And I had to go back to that lesson to speak up and to stand up and to speak the truth about what was going on and what happens on occasion. And I think about that event, and it's seared in my soul and it's seared in my brain. It is the filter through which I live my life. And as I walk my life journey, I think about being loving to myself and to my family and to all of humanity that I meet along the way. And I'm not always successful to either of those. And I still try. And as I try to be loving, I try not to cause harm. But I understand really this made-up social construct of race and how it gets used in ways that are not for the good of mankind, but for privileged and power and hierarchy and denial. They're not for betterment. And I try to do what my mom, live out my mother's words, and try to speak the truth and to be loving as it relates to the issue of racism and racial injustice. And I try to do that as much as I can and not cause any harm. And perhaps as I do that, I'm actually helping the world.